Good morning, good morning, good morning. This is wonderful. This is the biggest crowd we've had. Welcome to the Humanists of Greater Portland. We have our friendly house audience, which is, we had to get out extra chairs. We haven't had to do that in years. And also have our Zoom audience. We have 5 scholarship winners, and they'll be reading their essays this morning, and so glad they're here, and we're all excited to hear their thoughts and their winning essays. Humanism is a philosophy informed by science, inspired by art, and motivated by compassion. It affirms the dignity of all humans and our responsibility to treat our fellow humans with kindness and respect. Humanists value their fellow humans not only for all that they have accomplished in the arts, science, humanity, but also simply for their human potential. Humanists believe that this is the only life of which we are certain, and attempt to live the best life we can envision for ourselves. The Humanists of Greater Portland is a chapter of the American Humanist Association. And this morning's topic, our students' essays especially address the humanist commitments of critical thinking and responsibility. Kathy Humble is our reader this morning. She's coming to us through Zoom. Kathy, come on in. You're going to be our reader. Thank you so much for doing this.
Okay. The book is After the Ivory Tower Falls, How College Broke the American Dream and Blew Up Our Politics and How to Fix It by Will Bunch. This book details the growth of colleges, their tuition rates, the load of student loan debt, and degree requirements in the hiring world from the GI Bill until now. It relates a link between these increases and the growing polarization of our country to the point where many non-graduates hate not only universities, but even knowledge itself. After 273 glum pages, the 22-page last chapter proposes a cure, a new form of national service for young people. Here's some of what the author says. Somehow, from the ashes and flaming embers of January 6th and everything that led up to it, America will need to summon a shared sense of national purpose buried deeply within our souls. The last such moment may have been the American victory in World War II. The GI Bill, which proved that young people from working class backgrounds could thrive on a college campus when given the opportunity, would not have happened without the unity of victory, nor without the enthusiasm uncharacteristically shared by liberals and conservatives of doing something for returning veterans. Could America somehow rekindle the spirit of that immediate post-war era, somehow draft its young people, morally, if not with an actual induction board, for a national crusade that would offer the benefits of winning a war without all the carnage? Public intellectuals have fantasized about a corps of teen or 20-something enlistees who could tackle the country's myriad social and infrastructure problems in the spirit of national unity and moral purpose. And at various key moments, from Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal to JFK's New Frontier, U.S. citizens have actually seen a brief glimpse of what a youthful army can conquer in peacetime. It took a near-perfect storm of factors to restart the conversation about universal or mandatory public service, and perhaps making it more of a gap year that would come after high school as opposed to the post-college focus of Peace Corps or Teach for America. The first factor, making age 18 the focal point of an all-or-nothing lottery to decide who will sink or swim, has been a failure. Too many college-bound youth were making terrible bets with student loans, and the 18-year-olds who didn't go to college seemed to be dropping off the map until they started showing up in the death notices. A gap year would take some of that pressure off harried teenagers, giving them at least 12 months to develop new skills and new ideas about themselves. The other factor was the rising clamor for national service as an antidote for the country's deep disunity. We need to be reintroduced to each other in a place where we are all on the same team. A massive mobilization commitment to national service would be a powerful acknowledgement that the path America has traveled down since the 1970s, from the loan sharks of college debt to an aimless future of McJobs and YouTube radicalization, has turned out to be a catastrophic failure. How could America afford hundreds of billions of dollars for a universal gap year? Maybe that's not the right question. How much is America losing in lost economic opportunity and lost lives in a society where our young people can't afford to buy a home or even start a family, where too many turn to drugs or suicide, and where the fallout threatens our very democracy? The truth is that the United States has always had the money. We've proved this since 1990, when, according to a 2016 study released by the U.S. Department of Education, state spending for colleges and universities remained flat, while outlays for prisons doubled, to the point that 18 states spent more money on incarceration than on higher education. That's the inevitable outcome when a resentful society would rather lock away its young people than make the effort to give them a second chance. In fact, America could easily afford to offer unlimited tuition-free college or advanced training in the trades, as so many other developed nations do, if we only brought our Pentagon budget in line with our rivals, instead of today spending more than the next 10 largest militaries combined. That would require the recognition that the real threats to our national security no longer come from offshore, but from within, that the danger this time is not a new Pearl Harbor, but another January 6th.
Now I'd like to kind of explain how the meeting's going to go. In a few minutes, Joyce Lackie will be introducing our first reader. And there's 4, correct me if I'm wrong, Joyce, but there's 4 second place winners. And then there's 1 first place winner. So the second place winners will be reading first. And there'll be some time, a few minutes for questions after the reading. So I'm going to have Joyce, please come to the podium and introduce our first speaker.
This year, scholarship applicants could choose one of 3 topics. The first, a favorite word that pundits are using for the sharply opposing factions in our country is polarization. What has been your experience with drawing people together, and what else do you think might help to do that? Second topic. Young people have recently organized and spoken out more than ever about such issues as gun control and climate change. What in your personal experience has moved you to speak out or take other action? And third, statisticians report that the United States is becoming less religious. Does that match what you've seen in your own environment? If so, what evidence for that do you see? 4 of the 5 winners wrote about speaking out or taking other action. Each second place winner is receiving $1,000. The first place award is $2,000. Cole Delaney tied for second place. He recently graduated from Cleveland High School and plans to attend Grinnell College. He will major in either psychology or pre-law with the career goal of becoming either a therapist or lawyer. His other interests include music and sports, especially track and field, where he has competed in javelin and shot put. Cole, welcome to the microphone.
So, good morning. I'm really excited to be here. Quick note before I start is I kind of left out a thesis. So just a heads up, I talked about both my work with refugees and gun control. I've grown up understanding parts of the refugee experience. My grandmother, great-grandmother, and 2 uncles came to America as World War II refugees, arriving in 1952 aboard a Navy transport ship to Ellis Island. The 3 kids succeeded in America, becoming a California high school teacher of the year, a college president, and an attorney. Though their success was anchored by hard work and education, the kindness and support of others were also vital ingredients. The journey for refugees coming to America, especially with all the current politically charged rhetoric, seems much more difficult today. Recent images of Afghans attempting to flee their country, pushing kids and babies over airport walls, and desperately trying to board military aircraft was jarring. Many of the men in these families had worked for the American military, as did my great-grandmother. I can only imagine their anguish and wonder what happens next for these families should they escape Afghanistan and arrive in America. This motivated me to look for opportunities to support refugees coming to Oregon, specifically in helping children adapt to and thrive in their new home. In February of 2022, I applied to the Refugee Care Collective to be a youth mentor. And in April of 2022, I was paired with an Afghan family who recently arrived in Oregon. My focus is helping their 3 boys, Arfan is 15, Bilal 11, and Ibrahim 6, learn the English, master their homework, and have some fun. I've grown up with supportive parents and a stability which I've learned is easy to take for granted. The Afghan family I work with left a war-torn country, surrounded by violence and living in uncertainty. They have lived in 5 places the last 18 months, Their mother witnessed the Taliban execute her father. For this family, it takes very little for them to find joy. A day at the zoo made this clear. It was a special occasion evidenced by a simple carousel ride. The boys all scrambled to find a befitting animal. Orphan chose a bright blue Seahorse, grinned ear to ear, and waved to his parents each time he went around. I wouldn't have been caught dead riding carousel at the age of 10, let alone 15. I've recalled his beaming smile plenty of times. Little things matter. Admittedly, as a teenager, it's easy to feel powerless when seeing the problems in my community. I often wonder just how am I supposed to help? My experience with this Afghan family reminds me of just the opposite. I've watched the boys improve their English each week, show off their improving math and social skills. With each visit, I'm greeted by handshakes and giggling. We hold longer and more detailed conversations and connect now more as friends than acquaintances. My support for the family was intended to focus mainly on the children, but it has grown considerably. As I've helped the parents review and complete documents, I've looked quite a bit about TNF, SNAP food support, ESOL programs, and a utility subsidy program. It's rewarding to make a difference, but the list of challenges the family faces feel never ending. Through this experience, I'm reminded that youth or inexperience does not need to be a barrier to impact, nor does cynicism, which feels like a very strong headwind these days. America is a nation built by immigrants, and I'm committed to lifting up refugees and delivering on the ideals symbolized by the Statue of Liberty that greeted my family and millions of other refugees seeking a better future. I find strength and purpose in supporting others and will make advocacy and social justice a lifelong pursuit. With the empowerment I gained while assisting immigrants coming to Oregon, I focused my attention on another current issue, gun violence. In my hometown of Portland, shootings have tripled over the last 3 years. At my school, we've had active shooter lockdowns, including on December 12th, when a student was shot in front of the school and 18 bullet casings were left in the road. When our parents went to school, feeling unsafe in school was never a concern. Today in America, gun violence in schools is a regular occurrence and a very real fear. I believe reducing gun violence and gun deaths is a moral imperative. School shooting tragedies always lead to community outrage and proclamations by politicians that they will affect change. Unfortunately, it's always back to the status quo until the next mass shooting. My opportunity to advocate for stricter firearm laws came with the introduction of Measure 114, which requires a completion of a background check and safety training before firearm purchase. It also restricts magazine clips to 10 bullets. In both Uvalde and Sandy Hook, more than 140 rounds were fired in less than 4 minutes. When the Sandy Hook shooter reloaded, 11 children escaped. Fewer bolts in a magazine clip means more time for people to escape and for the police to arrive. Over 18 months, I attended rallies, gathered hundreds of ballot initiative signatures, distributed lawn signs, mailed postcards, called voters, and hosted a house event with my parents. I even appeared on ESPN wearing a Yes on 114 shirt and holding a banner during the fourth quarter of the Oregon-UCLA game. We weren't able to find direct evidence, but during the fourth quarter, we were asked by staff just to take the signs down. So that was pretty memorable. While canvassing for petition signatures, I met people who didn't support the measure and posed mental health as the sole solution. Though important, it does not diminish the immediate impact on gun violence we can have through better permitting and fewer bullets. Research has shown gun-related deaths decline in states that have laws similar to Measure 114. On Election Day this past year, Measure 114 passed with 25,000 votes. I've learned firsthand through my work on the measure that we don't need to rely upon politicians to effect change. And I hope that the passage of this measure can be a catalyst for future efforts to legislate common sense gun laws around the country.
People who would like to help refugees coming to this area?
Reach out to the Refugee Care Collective. They were awesome. They were able to get us a family to work with within a month, and they've been really supportive. They've been able to gather, I guess, supplies for families that we've been able to deliver. And
Could you say that a little closer to the mic, please?
Sorry,
Thank you.
didn't realize that. So
I didn't get the name of the organization.
the Refugee Care Collective, which is based in Portland. So I researched them.
Thank you for all you've done. And as a resident who lives right around the corner from Cleveland, go Warriors. I'm interested in your thoughts about what has happened with Measure 114 to date. You've probably been following it closely, and as well as the similar measure that eventually made its way through the legislature this past session.
It's a shame that we can't see eye to eye and that we still haven't made much headway in terms of legislative progress.
Oh, thank you. That was
Yeah.
really well done. And we're so happy that you're heading to college and a really bright future. Whichever you choose to do, you're going to do very well.
Thank you.
Mhm. Thank you.
Kai Kubo tied for second place.
Mhm.
He recently graduated from Cleveland High School and plans to attend California State University at Fullerton. He will major in kinesiology, which he explained means body mechanics, with the eventual goal of becoming a physical therapist or physician specializing in sports medicine. He responded to topic number 3 on whether the United States is becoming less religious. Welcome, Kai.
Mhm.
I find it fascinating to listen to my mother talk about her foray into organized religion. When she was in middle school and high school, she felt, as many kids are wont to do, the need to belong. Being from a relatively conservative town in Idaho, it was easy to get pulled into a church youth group. And she says that initially that group fulfilled a deep social need and gave her a sense of purpose and belonging. But it wasn't long until the pressure to join the larger congregation on Sunday began to mount, and the church began to wrap her in a much different sort of message. The message is, instead of being based on love and inclusion, based instead on judgment and exclusion on the basis of religious boundaries. And although much of it made it easy, she'd forged deep connections in the church and had further brought her own mother, which being my grandmother, who suffered from multiple sclerosis, into the congregation. My grandmother embraced the church because they promised her that she could be healed through prayer. And when her condition did not improve, hope turned into despair. My mom was angry about false hope being given to the family, and it served to further complicate her relationship with the church. However, because she didn't want to lose the community which she'd fought for and attained, and found a place to belong, she swallowed her unease and took the path of least resistance, which led back to the same room at the same church every single Sunday. But if we fast forward a couple of years, in college, she met my father, and she now likes to say that he, quote unquote, saved her by saving her from organized religion. But the thing is, it's important to understand that he didn't do this by telling my mom that she was wrong. She says that he simply asked her questions that gave her pause and introduced her to other ways of thinking and of finding community. By the time that I was born, my father was a rather proud atheist, and my mother was, for what it's worth, a quiet agnostic. And she still retained ties to friends and family in the church, and she does to this day. There are many great people to be found in all walks of life. But my mother was uncomfortable with the judgment that she felt would be leveled at her if they knew she had strayed from the church. As I approached the age where I could start to understand their different approaches to religion, things like social media were taking off, and my parents both began reading and listening to content focused on skepticism and secular humanism and even atheism. And I've therefore come of age in listening to adults talking about what it means to be moral, what it means to be ethical, and how we face down the unique responsibility and ethical consequences of human decisions. I've also come of age being encouraged to care for others and the planet, not because of any dogma or any creed, but because we are all on this planet together and we have a responsibility to one another to do the best that we can to improve human health and the environment that we have. You see, over time, I saw my mother move away from the vague language of agnosticism and begin to speak in more concrete terms about her beliefs and embrace things like secular humanism. According to her, when she was in the church, the word atheist was practically a swear word, a word for, godless heathens that are guided by demonic impulses. But the humanist movement has given her the tools, the strength, and the language to reclaim and move past the term atheist and has given her a way to proudly identify to the world who she is and what she truly stands for. I am grateful to the writers, thinkers, activists, and podcasters who have created and daylighted a mainstream humanist community. Many people, young and old, remain relationally trapped in a religion as my mom was. While separating from organized religion is still extremely challenging, it gives me hope to know that there is now a vibrant, proud, and organized community that has an increasingly visible presence in our society. It is easier now than ever to find and engage with these communities. The profile of these secular organizations has risen in part because of the incredible philanthropy coming out of them. I am proud of the work being done in secular humanist and atheist communities to raise the profile of secular humanism, while at the same time raising money for charities, nonprofits, and legal and social work to protect minorities and advocate for and defend LGBTQ+ rights. The narrative around secular humanism will continue to change as we continue to tell the story about the good that it represents. The narrative will also continue to change as we learn how to engage with those who continue to embrace organized religion. Proudly representing humanism creates space for others to acknowledge the shared desire for an improvement in the human condition, and even to acknowledge their own questions and doubts about organized religion. Quiet tolerance has long been the default for non-believers. But as we learn to embrace the humanist movement and to favor the intelligent, compassionate asking of questions over the implied consent that comes with silence, we will continue to move our society towards a brighter and more enlightened future.
Come in. Looks like Jeff has a question. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you, Kai. You've talked about your parents. What do you think about this subject, and how have you come to your own disposition concerning whether there's a supernatural or no supernatural?
Well, obviously, as I've talked about, my parents come from very different backgrounds. By the time they were in college, my father was obviously an avowed atheist, and my mother was kind of coming to terms with her own views on the concept of religion. But because of their varied backgrounds, and because a large part of the humanist worldview is to support and encourage people to thrive in their own environments, my parents have always made it obvious to me that I am free to choose what I would like to believe and what I would like to do. And to them, I'm very grateful for that. But my biggest, I guess, statement regarding that would be that for what I believe, I take largely after my parents, but my views are still my own. Parents respect that and support that. And I'm sure that my views will continue to change as I learn more and develop more life experience.
You're in your introduction, it mentioned that you're considering medicine, these are physical therapy or a physician. Can you tell us, I'm an occupational therapist, so I'm like so thrilled you're going into the medical world. And can you tell us a little bit about why you made that decision, or why you're thinking that way?
I know it sounds a little bit goody two shoes, but I like the idea that the work I'm going to do is going to make a positive difference in the world. Because if the work you do doesn't contribute to something good and something positive, I feel like it's easy to become lost and to become unfocused and unhappy in whatever profession or course of work that you choose. And so honestly, it's not entirely altruistic. I simply want an occupation where I can feel good going to work every day, and I can feel fulfilled and satisfied knowing that I'm making positive change in the world. And so, a little bit selfish, but
No. Oh, I'm so happy please come back to Oregon and be in our medical career professions, because you're going to be wonderful at what you're doing. Well done. Thank you.
thank you very much.
Damaris Coles, tied for second place. She recently graduated from Cleveland High School and will major in business at the University of Oregon. She enjoys sports. Damaris came to the United States from China in the 6th grade.
Okay, so gun violence and climate change have been hot topics for years, and my generation has indeed started to protest against the unfairness of our present situation with regard to both. The older generation's mistakes with gun laws continue to impact our world. Tragedy upon tragedy lands on us, the young, the innocent, and we have no resource to make changes. All we can do is raise our voices and protest. Mass shootings have become increasingly frequent over the past few years. Teachers have been injured, students have been killed, families have lost their loved ones, but America shows one of its many dark sides, as it exemplifies the old Chinese expression to pick up a large stone only to drop it on your foot. Americans agonize on this issue, but it only gets worse. I want to yell sometimes, hey, elect officials, no guns mean no shootings. This isn't rocket science. Critics of gun control laws talk about protection, recreation, and their God-given constitutional rights. And they speak a certain truth, which I accept, but something is deadly wrong in this country. And these critics are deniers. They are selfish. They blame the shooters, not the guns. Recently, I experienced a live shooting near my school. As I was sitting in class, I heard a loud double popping sound, shots fired. The class went silent, and a thought immediately ran through my head. Is it my time? A few students were so scared that they sat under their desks, hoping the shooter would not enter. Fortunately, the shots were outside, and everything blew over quickly. But for the sake of students' mental health, the school decided to give us the next day off, and I asked myself, does this really make any difference? The next day, many students decided to skip school, and on social media, they shared their opinions about the school's actions. 2 weeks later, there were other gun shootings near other schools in Portland, and there was another reminder that school was no longer a safe place. I strongly believe that the government isn't doing enough to solve these problems. Instead, I see more wasted opportunities. I see the Republicans in Tennessee, where another shooting had just claimed 6 lives, voting out Black Democrats who are firmly pushing for gun control. They claimed that the 3 Democrats' actions were disorder and a dishonor to the House. The youth of the US can see through this. It's not a dishonor to protect students, but it's probably not what their NRA friends and supporters want. And as the famous blues legend Buddy Guy sings in the powerful Gunsmoke Blues, some folk blame the shooter, other folk blame the gun. They don't stop the bullets and more blood's yet to come. A million thoughts and prayers wouldn't bring back anyone. I'm with my peers and Buddy Guy. I want to feel safe. Why can't our leaders really lead? At the same time, climate change has also been a serious issue for many years. Trees have been clear-cut, waterways have been ruined. Our air is compromised throughout the world by cars, factories, and industrial disregard. Entire species have disappeared in the last century, and habitats for all creatures are shrinking. It appears that humans are very bad for the planet. And why is my generation left to clean up the mess? From the first time I really understood Greta Thunberg, I really liked her. Standing up to all those grown-ups and giving them hell for failing the future generations. Speaking truth to power seems to me be scary, but she is very good at it. And I think she has made an impact. The elders, instead of helping to build a better future for the new generations, have created conflict and chaos. To prepare for a healthier earth, we young people have to stand up for ourselves. We have to protest, walkouts, sit-ins. We will be heard. That's why there have been protests around the world. It all started on April 22nd, 1970, when people decided to create a holiday called Earth Day to honor what was given to us, a home. As the years have passed, people have never stopped protesting for the world they want. Schools have started to gather and protest in their own countries, expressing their frustration about others' actions, or more accurately, inaction. Last year, when I was a junior, students from many schools in Portland gathered downtown and marched through downtown to protest. There were thousands of students protesting with a few activists to lead the way. That was my first experience at a protest. It felt wonderful and powerful. In addition to a lot of personal and lifestyle changes I made when I immigrated to the US, such as recycling, having conversation, hiking. It was a great way to support the planet. One does not become an eco warrior overnight, but I do feel solidly on the way. I also realized that what has kept that protest going is people's persistence. Greta Thunberg was 8 when she first learned how climate change affects the world we are living in. I kept thinking about it, and I just wonder if I'm going to have a future. I think there's a subtext to this comment that is a strong criticism of those currently in power. While you have been making money and spoiling the planet for a century, what have you done to prepare for my future and that of my generation? This is a feeling shared by many young people today, and it's hard to call out parents, older relatives, and their friends. Whose fault is this? This lack of accountability and responsibility. It's like a million-headed Hydra, and Hercules got caught up at immigration. So yes, it's up to us. Thank you.
What, could you tell me, what were the students protesting when they went, when their protest that you attended? What was the cause that they were protesting?
The cause?
Yeah, what were they protesting against or for?
They're more of protesting against how like just a lot of factories have been happening around the world, and just cars and gas and all that stuff.
It was climate control. It
was climate control,
Mhm.
and it was more about like how it changed the weather around the world too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is hard. It's when you're with your people in the same view, it's really fun, but then you go out and
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we have a question. Go ahead, Roy.
When I was a kid, and I think it was last year, grade school, I remember one kid brought a rifle to school and showed how to clean it and talked about, safety and so on. And nobody thought twice about it. I wonder what the difference is from today. Well, I think it was that all of our parents and grandparents and so on had just come through several big wars where they were intimately involved in, and they knew what the carnage was with gun violence and that sort of thing, only organized, and that it was a gun was an extremely important responsibility.
Yeah. I agree to that statement.
Roy, when I was a kid too, the guys, it was always boys, but they would get on the bus with their guns because they were going to go shooting after, because they brought food to their families. But the children, the guns that you're worried about are killing human beings. They're killing students, and that never happened when I was a little girl. Never. But you were facing that really every day, aren't you? Every day since you came to school here in the States.
Yeah,
And that's got to be frightening.
it is.
Yeah. Joyce, you have a question.
Damaris, I'm going to pronounce your name.
Ooh, wait a minute.
Oh,
Something's up.
I'm going to pronounce your name correctly now. You might, people here will notice that we have quite a few students from Cleveland High School. Every year we run the scholarship contest, we get a number of students, a number of winners from Cleveland High School. How would you describe what Cleveland High School's program and what has contributed to you personally?
Well, I think Cleveland High School provides a few good programs, especially maybe for like foreigners or like Asians and all that stuff. They have clubs about it, and it's just, it feels kind of safe to be with like the same community as people who has kind of the same ethnicity as you, and just like being able to also share out your stories to each other is something that I'm really happy about to do in school. But yeah.
Thank you. Now Cooper Long is our first place winner, and he recently graduated from Franklin High School and will attend Oregon State University as a civil engineering major. Here's a little background on the fentanyl test strips mentioned in his essay. 9 states already do not consider fentanyl test strips to be drug paraphernalia. 10 other states are working to remove the test strips from drug paraphernalia lists, as many have already done so, and 7 more don't enforce the rules about test strips. In the Oregon legislature, House Bill 2880 was introduced by Representative Maxine Dexter, herself a physician, to remove barriers to distribution of fentanyl test strips. Because of the legislature's long delay this year, the bill is still in committee. Thank you, Cooper, and welcome to the podium.
I'm Cooper, and this is my essay. I'm writing this essay about a failed project. I tried and I failed. This past summer, I joined the Democratic Socialists of America, and in the fall, I founded a Franklin High School chapter of YDSA, the youth branch. I did not have a set idea of what we would do at that time, but I knew if we got enough compassionate minds together, we would be able to start an organization that would represent the needs of the students at Franklin. Traditional student government does not do that. Traditional student government is mostly performative, a popularity contest to pad students' resumes. They do not take our needs or concerns to administration, and they do not actually represent the students. I started the Franklin chapter of YDSA, and 10 students joined off the bat, attending weekly meetings. Another student expressed interest in co-leading the club, and since my purpose was to found it, have it continue once I graduated, I was happy to share leadership. In our meetings, an issue important to many of the students was clear: fentanyl overdose and drug use. There have been several PPS high school students' lives lost due to fentanyl overdose over the last couple of years. According to data published by the Center of Disease Control, beginning in 2021, we exceeded 100,000 drug overdoses per year in the United States and more than 1,000 deaths per year in Oregon. Deaths by overdose continue to rise, with synthetic opioids the fastest growing cause. In 2010, there were 21,089 reported synthetic opioid deaths in the United States, 41,600 in 2017, and 68,630 in 2020, and 80,411 in 2021. We all know someone or know of someone who has died of an overdose. It does not even seem surprising anymore to learn of a beloved celebrity or musician losing their life to overdose. People know the risk of drug use, but knowing does not change behavior. While the use of drugs by teenagers has stayed stable or decreased in recent years, the number of deaths by overdose has increased significantly due to fentanyl and its ominous presence in pills students may consider safe. As the Franklin YDSA chapter, we decided doing something to reduce the risk of our peers by dying of drug overdose was our project for the year. A freshman at our high school had lost their life to an overdose several months ago now. I wonder if we had been allowed, could our efforts have prevented her death? I wonder if a test strip could have saved a life. Our plan was to distribute fentanyl test strips to students, but we hit our first barrier. Fentanyl test strips are legally drug paraphernalia, which are illegal to purchase or possess in Oregon for minors. We found a source willing to provide us with 100 test strips to distribute. We hit our second barrier. School administration would not allow us to distribute strips on campus. Again, because of the legality of possession of strips themselves. We found a way around that barrier by organizing an event to distribute strips off campus at a nearby park. Then we hit our third and final barrier and accepted our failure of our project. Our trusted teacher sponsor questioned the ethics of us distributing the test strips to students as condoning drug use. The legal issues I was not terribly concerned about, though I thought it was unlikely I thought it was unlikely that legal action would be taken against students who were trying to encourage harm reduction practices to their peers. The illegality of test strips as drug paraphernalia has been ignored by most states, where laws were written without consideration of harm prevention measures, and Oregon law enforcement does not generally make arrests solely on the grounds of possession. The CDC supports use of fentanyl test strips as a harm reduction measure, and even supports the use of federal funds to purchase strips. The ethical argument was that we are condoning drug use in students, but I personally disagree. Making fentanyl test strips available is no more different than making condoms available for sexually active teenagers. And like condoms, they do not always work, but they both reduce the risk inherent in risky behavior. These measures do not enable drug use or underage sexual activity, but they recognize the autonomy of teenagers as individuals with agency over their own bodies. Doing nothing out of fear is more ethically questionable, in my opinion. We know that just say no abstinence campaigns do not work or change behavior, but there is evidence that testing can. Imagine a student who is not necessarily an illicit drug user, who thinks they are taking Adderall. Testing to discover it has fentanyl in it. This could be enough to scare or discourage further use. I'm not suggesting test strips be given out as free pass to use drugs. They should be paired with education on the risks of fentanyl and prevalence and counterfeit pills that may be laced with the lethal opiate. This was the plan of our club's test strip distribution event. Drug use is a complicated behavior that cannot be efficiently treated by shaming the user. As a socialist activist, I believe we should get to the core of the reason for drug use by first ensuring that the basic physical, material, and emotional needs of our young people are met. But in the meantime, we should treat individuals with compassion, including those who use drugs, honor their agency, and be creative in our solutions to reduce harm, which I have learned are humanist values. I believe that harm reduction is aligned with humanist principles and is ethically defensible. While the Franklin chapter of YDSA was not able to carry out our project as we planned, I will not give up. I wonder if a test strip could have saved a life. So we did distribute all the strips that we had.
At the park that day?
Yes.
Okay.
So we were able to do that outside of our school off campus, but there's a park right next to the school. So we did one at one side and then we went to the other side and went across the street and handed them out to students.
Okay.
Whatever works.
Right.
But after that, our club sponsor basically told us we couldn't do it anymore. And that we had to scrub it from anything. Yeah.
Wow. You worked so hard to make that happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, that had to be really hurtful to have someone say that you trusted and was your leader, really, your
Mhm.
sponsor,
Yeah.
say no more, even though you found that so powerful to reduce harm. We have some, I figured, we've got some questions. Come on in and ask your question, please.
So one of the biggest questions and one of the biggest issues and barriers that it sounded like to fentanyl test strip distribution was the fact that it was considered drug paraphernalia and is currently illegal to sell or distribute to minors in Oregon, at least.
Yeah.
What would you say is the biggest immediate impact that we could have to help push a bill through the legislation that would make the use of test strips available for people of all ages in order to effectively reduce the risk to young people of drug overdoses?
Well, the most efficient way to advocate directly to legislators is to call their offices and email their offices and make sure your voice is heard by them. It is not that hard to call your local representative or call a state senator or even call the governor's office. You can do it all. Making sure that your voice is heard in any way, even just annoying them, like that's kind of part of activism is is making sure that you disrupt enough to make your voice heard.
Practical question. How does it work? How do you use the test strip?
So the main strips that we acquired are basically it's just a little like paper strip, and it has I don't remember what, it just has a little chemical basically on it. And you mix a little water with a tiny bit of the drug you're trying to test. And then you put a droplet of that water onto the strip. So yeah, usually it's like a pill or a powder, essentially. Yeah, so you take the pill apart and you take the powder and test what's on there. And yeah.
Jeff, you have a question.
Yeah, thank you, Cooper.
Oh, cool. Okay.
What do you think is causing so much demand for these powerful opiate drugs in the US? You know, I think about the difference between where the drugs are produced and where they're consumed. Do you have any thoughts about that?
I think it's largely a result of our medical system that has been centered around making profits for large medical corporations. A group like the Sackler family, they essentially got this country hooked on synthetic opiates purely for profit. It's quite disgusting, but that's what our country has become, and it's ultimately going to be a fight for everybody to get adequate health care and make sure that people can get the drugs when they need them, but not be hooked on them by abusive doctors or corporations who are trying to squeeze them of money.
Hi, full disclosure, I'm Cooper's mom. What other important harm reduction measures related to this do you recommend everyone have, and how would they get it?
Some of the biggest ones is, I mean, statewide, I think the state should, like Oregon, decriminalize possession of drugs, because criminalization is exactly what leads to that loop in people getting drugs and then being sent to prison and then coming back and frankly needing more drugs out of desperation. But on a individual level, be there for people who are suffering. Be there for those who you have seen abusive behavior with their drug use. I've experienced that a lot in my life. My best friend from freshman year until now, he's going to be my dorm buddy. He was sent to rehab in freshman year in the wilderness, and sent to boarding school in Montana for abuse of like cough medicine and all sorts of stuff. It can just happen. He went to Montessori school his whole life, and then he went to freshman year in public high school, and he was just exposed to those things. It can literally happen to anybody, and you just need to notice those behaviors and be there.
I found a box of Narcan in Cooper's room, and he educated me of how easy it is for people to access Narcan. Will you tell people how anyone can access that and what it can do? Thank you.
Yeah, you can get Narcan at, I'm pretty sure now you can get it at most like pharmacies, like general pharmacies like Walgreens and whatnot, or CVS. But I got mine from the student health center at Franklin High School. I was going in for just a regular checkup, and they just offered it to me, and I carry it with me. I work as a lifeguard and a swim instructor. I make sure to have it there because there have been overdoses and people using drugs at our facilities. And in case anything were to happen, I do want to be in a position to help. So Narcan is essentially I'm not sure about the actual science of it, but if somebody's having an overdose, it essentially like gets their body regulating normally again. It kind of shoots. No, so it's an injection, like an EpiPen, or no, it's the nasal spray. Yeah. Sorry, that's the one that cops use. I use the nasal spray. I haven't used it, but I have one on me. Yeah, it's a nasal spray. So you spray it in. Like, it was really easy to get at the health center. They just gave it to me and then told me to watch a 2-minute tutorial video. That's it. OSU.
Question from the back.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I have a question about your plans in college. Many years ago, I created a program for the city of Portland to pipeline high school students into civil engineering programs and ensure that they understood the impact of creating and maintaining infrastructure on our environment. And I have not kept up in over a decade. I'd love to know if you have friends who are planning to, you yourself or friends planning to go into public sector, civil engineering, and if there is a focus on the environment. Just one example, the reason I created the program is a friend working on a bridge told me that they had the curtain to keep the paint from going in the river on the Broadway Bridge, but it was flapping open and the paint was going. So they were following the letter of the law, but not the spirit of the law. And so I'm just wondering how, like, what are the young people doing and what will it be like in the future when someone is working on our bridges?
I am going into civil engineering for that reason. I'm pretty sick of American infrastructure. I briefly went on a trip to Europe and I went to the UK and I went to Portugal. And it was kind of mind-blowing just seeing that you could walk basically everywhere. You could take your bike, you could take public transit, basically anywhere you wanted. I'm pretty sick of American car culture. That's some of the main reasons I'd want to get into it. There is a path for America to shine and live a healthier and more environmentally friendly way, but we're just not there yet. And we need more people in specifically civil engineering for that reason.
Al, go ahead with your question.
Yes, we would like to know from you if there's anything that members of the public can do to protect young people in the high schools from fentanyl. But my question is also, I understand that about 80% of the street drugs are laced with fentanyl these days, that you really don't need to do the test. You 4 times out of 5, you'd be right to just throw the stuff away straight away. There must be some bigger elements of the problem that need to be addressed. Do you have any ideas about that?
I mean, I haven't heard that specific statistic, but that's just kind of the reality of street drugs. They are completely unregulated. That's why we need decriminalization, so these drugs can be regulated and not possess these super deadly chemicals.
Is there a particular organization or group we could support or volunteer with or something like that if we wanted to keep fentanyl and kids apart?
Yeah, No More Dead Friends is local Portland nonprofit. Pretty dark name, but that's like, it's frankly like, it is what it is. But yes, they are great. They weren't able to work with us because we're underage and they couldn't legally give us the strips, but they were very supportive in what we were doing. And they're very sweet people. So No More Dead Friends.
Go ahead and please. Oh, wait, hang on 1 second. There's a question from the chat. This is from Leslie Haggard. Any thoughts about what leads people to using harmful drugs?
Well, it's a
big
pretty
question. Yeah.
deep question. Yeah. There are many things though, like especially nowadays, a lot of teenagers are struggling with depression. Coming out of COVID, it was pretty isolating for a lot of young kids. Either like, you're just sitting at home, you don't really have anything else to do. If you're going out, you're trying to find something exciting to do, but everything's closed. And, it was a really tough time for kids. Drug use is fairly common in Portland among youth. And I see it less as a problem that needs to be strictly eliminated, but it needs to be monitored and fostered with love. People need love and support when they're going through these times and feeling like they need to take hard drugs. It shouldn't feel like a need. It shouldn't be needed at all, but we need to be there for people.
Yes, Cooper, thank you. There's a question from the floor.
If I can, not really a question.
Okay.
I'm going to mention the word congratulations to each of you young people, but I mention it and I'm going to focus on something else. I mention it because it is warranted. Congratulations. What I really want to focus on is keep it up. Not congratulations, because it's not a fait accompli.
No.
You guys have chosen great aspects of focus in your life as young people. Keep it up. Part of what it is, a willingness to update, to change your mind in the face of new and different evidence, to not be locked down on just one life perspective that you're going to keep forever. This group is a wonderful example, I think, of that willingness to update and change your mind. And secondly, the willingness to be involved in tough tasks that aren't necessarily popular. So keep that stuff up. You guys are already difference makers. We're going to need more difference makers. And my generation, we're doing what we can, but we're going to need a lot of push from your generation. Keep it up.
Cooper, I'm still a little confused about, you got Narcan from the clinic. Why were they, what is wrong with the fentanyl? What is that?
It's like technically under a different legal protection. Yeah.
Okay,
Like Narcan has been more accessible because it's a more, well,
it saves someone's life.
It literally saves somebody's life, and it's unlike a condom. It's not, it just minimizes risk. It can fail, but a strip, yeah, just like that, can't ultimately be 100% all the time.
Right.
And that was a lot of the argument we had with our sponsor. And she was saying that it's not 100%. She's a scientist. She's like, it's not 100%. You can't know that you're doing something right all the time if you're giving a strip and condoning drug use. I mean, killing a child.
And that this, even though they have the fentanyl or the opioid in their hand, and they're just testing to see if it has it has more stronger. I mean, when I worked at the burn center, if someone was on fentanyl, we had an anesthesia. We had some from anesthesia monitoring everything about them. And I can't believe this thing is now on the street.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Mm.
Yeah. So thank you for your good work. Let's see, any other questions? Or Joyce, did you want to make a closing statement? Yes. Cooper, thank you so much. Joyce is going to join us. Certainly we need to recognize the wonders of the committee that read all these essays, and thank you, Joyce, for all that you and the committee did.
Thank you. And thank not only these wonderful students for the work that they've done and the willingness to make a difference. I want to thank also the parents and friends and loved ones who came to support these students. And I would like to ask the parents if they would stand. Thank you all. Okay. And thank you, students, for this marvelous program and for what you're doing and for what you're going to be doing in the future.